Welcome, everybody. I hope you had a fantastic Labor Day weekend. If you had the day off, President Joe Biden gave a speech in Philadelphia. He talked about jobs, he talked about labor. And, one of the interesting things that I am going to be getting into is that many of us had sort of mediocre expectations about Joe Biden as president when it came to a few particular areas. Labor would certainly be one of those areas. Cannabis, I would say, is another. Student loan debt forgiveness is another. And in these three areas, I actually believe that President Joe Biden has overperformed expectations for those who have been paying attention. On labor, does this mean Joe Biden is God's gift to the labor movement? Excuse a religious term. If it doesn't apply, it doesn't really apply to me, but the proverbial God's gift to the labor movement? No, it doesn't mean that, but it does mean that compared to much of what was expected, we actually have gotten some important things from the Biden administration on labor. I'll do a segment on that coming up. But the point here is that in yesterday's speech in Philadelphia, Joe Biden genuinely hammering Trump on the jobs record. Many of you wrote to me and said, David, is this true? Or are the statements that Biden makes about jobs accurate? Let's listen to them, and then I want to discuss this with you.
To make that a reality for every family in this country. And we are making it a reality. Nearly 13,500,000 jobs just since you got me sworn in January of 2020. 800,000 new manufacturing jobs. But you wouldn't know from all the negative news you hear. But we're getting through this, one of the greatest job creation periods in American history. For real, that's a fact. And it wasn't that long ago we were losing jobs in this country. In fact, the guy who held this job before me was just one of two presidents in history. He was but here's an important point, one of two presidents in history that left office with fewer jobs in America than when he got elected office. By the way, you know who the other one was? Herbert Hoover. Isn't that kind of coincidental? Look, but we're turning things around because of you. When the last guy was here, you were shipping jobs to China. Now we're bringing jobs home from China. When the last guy was here, your pensions were at risk. We helped save millions of pensions with your help. When the last guy was here, he looked at the world from Park Avenue. I look at it from Scranton, Pennsylvania. I look at it from Claymont, Delaware.
Okay, so by the way, why does Biden call it a coincidence that the only other president to lose jobs was Herbert Hoover? It's because Herbert Hoover is sort of the other businessman president. You might have remembered that when Mitt Romney was running for president. He and the people who supported Romney said, we need a businessman to run this country like a business. And many of us said, what evidence do we have that businessmen or business people make good presidents? The only other example is Herbert Hoover, and he was a disastrous president. He worked in mining, consulted, and managed, etc. Okay, so now we have two presidents, former business people, Donald Trump and Herbert Hoover. What about that record? Is it true that there were more people working and lower unemployment at the start of Trump's presidency rather than at the end? The answer is yes, but you know that I don't play these political games with these economic indicators, so I'm going to give you the full story, but let's start with the data. When Donald Trump took office, there were 152 million people working. This is the so-called labor force participation. Republicans love citing it when it's convenient. 152 million people working when Trump came into office, only 149.8 million working when Trump left office. So it is absolutely the case that there were fewer people working when Trump left compared to when Trump came in. But in the interests of playing it down the middle and not politicizing these indicators, remember that there are reasons that the labor participation rate can go down that are indicative of a good economy. I'll give you an example. If you have saved enough money to retire because the economy has been good, and you retire, you leave the labor force. Labor force participation goes down, but it's because the economy has been good to you that you can afford to retire. Another very similar example is you go back to school. Imagine a 40-year-old parent who goes back to school leaving the labor force. You have lowered the labor participation rate, but the reason you're able to do it is because the economy is good enough that maybe on one person's salary rather than two, you can afford to raise your family. So in this particular case with Trump, it had much to do with COVID, but let's remember the truth about the labor force participation rate. Okay, well, but let's go further. What about the unemployment rate? Because the unemployment rate is reflective of people looking for jobs. If you retire, you leave the labor force, but you're not looking for a job. What about people looking for jobs? And indeed, when Donald Trump took office, the unemployment rate was 4.7, and when Donald Trump left office, the unemployment rate was 6.3. So yes, looking at two important economic indicators, there were more people working when Trump took office. He left office with fewer people working. There was a higher unemployment rate when Trump left office. All of that indicating a worse economy. Now let's continue to be honest and upfront. You can't ignore the unique and unprecedented insanity that COVID threw into the economy. Whatever your opinion is of the so-called lockdowns that Trump put in, through state governors, or whatever it is that you believe, we have to acknowledge that much of the economic circumstances in that last year of Trump's presidency related to COVID. Big picture, Democrats bad for the economy, Republicans good, very much not true, and we've talked about that many times. Good for Joe Biden for pointing out what are undeniable, accurate, true economic numbers. It's summertime, it's hot, you're sweating, and unfortunately, for many of us, it means sticking and readjusting when you wear traditional underwear. It is an ugly thing, but there is a solution, fortunately. Our sponsor, Sheath, is the ergonomically designed underwear with a pouch in the front that will keep everything separate and comfortable. Sheath underwear makes sure you stay dry and cool, and the chafing. Everything can breathe and stay fresh and keep you comfortable. They've got a bunch of different designs, something for everybody. The quality is great, super long lasting. I've had mine for years. I love them year round, but if it's hot and humid, then it is a must. Their Airflow Mesh series can be particularly effective in the heat. I know you're going to love Sheath also. You really just have to try it for yourself to really understand the difference. And my audience gets 20% off. Go to sheathunderwear.com/Pacman and use the code Pacman. The link is down below.